Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk for a bit about the Milwaukee Bucks. There may be no franchise that's been more entrenched in constantly interesting storylines over the past 8-9 months than the Milwaukee Bucks. It began first round of the playoffs, get eliminated to the Miami Heat, who were a play-in team in pretty convincing fashion, embarrassing loss in the first round. Next, make the blockbuster trade of the summer, dealing for Damian Lillard right out from under the nose of that same Heat team they lost to, adding a superstar teammate next to Giannis to try and bolster this team for a revenge tour of sorts. It was a trade that I liked. I liked adding Damian Lillard next to Giannis. I thought it made them one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference, right up there next to the Boston Celtics, who eventually acquired Jrue Holiday, rerouted over from Portland in that Damian Lillard trade, which made them very scary as well. They felt like the two juggernauts of the East, and that it was inevitable they were eventually going to face off in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Bucks now were also being led by Adrian Griffin, who I liked as a head coaching hire. I thought they had a fantastic offseason. They even convinced Giannis to sign an extension early, keeping him in Milwaukee when it felt like a lot of questions popped up over the summer about whether or not he would be there long term. So, huge successful offseason they come into this year, and if you just take a look at the numbers, it looks like they're having a dominant season. Currently, they're 25-12, 3.5 games back from the Celtics. They've got the 5th best record in the NBA. If I just showed you those numbers, said that, hey, they've got Dame, Giannis, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, you'd probably think this is a juggernaut team, and it still does feel like they've got the ability to try and compete for championship because of the talent, but the team has been underwhelming so far, which feels crazy to say for a team that's got the record that they have to be that far up in the standings as they are, which is probably why the title of this video is going to be The Bucks Don't Make Sense, because they don't. They have this amazing record, but this isn't a team that feels nearly as good as they should be. They feel like they're constantly underperforming, having to make these big time comebacks. They're currently in the worst stretch of their season, and it seems like things are going wrong at every point. So I want to go ahead and talk about them. I think a great example of some of the struggles they've had so far this season came up in their loss last night to the Utah Jazz. Credit to the Jazz, they've been playing well recently, but this was a home game for the Bucks, one that they should absolutely win, even though Damian Lillard was not playing due to personal issues. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But the Bucks went out there and didn't just lose, they got destroyed. They ended up losing by 16 points, and the game wasn't that close for a majority of it. They were down by as much as 33 in this game, down I believe 31 points at half. They were getting booed at halftime. The Bucks fans were letting them hear it. The Bucks tried to make a comeback. They cut it within 10 points in the fourth quarter, but they didn't have enough to bring it all the way back, end up losing by double digits. Lauri Markkanen 21 points, Keontae George 19 points, John Collins 19, Jordan Clarkson 21. The Jazz as a whole shot 52.2% from the field, 45.5% from deep, and scored 132 points, which is their second highest point total in the past month and a half. Again, they were missing Dame, but even still, I don't think that's an excuse to let Utah waltz into Milwaukee and destroy you on your home court. Like, if this was a close loss against a surging Jazz team, sure, it's not the end of the world, but the fact that you got blown out, you were down by as much as 33 points to the Utah Jazz, who aren't even a playing team at this point when you're supposed to be a championship contender. It's not a good look. Good teams have bad losses. It happens all the time, but this is also just the latest in a string of losses for the Bucks, where it doesn't feel like they've been able to put together a consistent stretch of basketball for really more than a quarter over the past 5 games. In those past 5, they've lost 4, 2 of them to the Indiana Pacers, who have had their number this season, 1 to the Houston Rockets, and now this loss to the Jazz. And that one win they had was a win over the San Antonio Spurs that was really, really close. Trey Jones had a shot to go ahead and tie it up and potentially send it to overtime right at the end of that one. If Giannis didn't hit 2 big clutch threes down the stretch, they probably are in a 5-game skid, one that you should not have if you're this Bucks team. They just have looked really unimpressive as of late. Not to mention that after the Houston loss, Giannis called out pretty much the entire franchise. He said, we have to be better. We have to play better. We have to be coached better. Every single thing, everybody has to be better. Everybody. It starts from the equipment manager. He has to wash our clothes better. He's not just calling out his teammates, the coaching staff. He's calling out the equipment managers. That's how bad it's gotten over the past few games in Milwaukee, where it really just does not feel like this team is playing nearly up to the level that they should be at. Again, they got booed loudly at home in this game, going down 30 to the Utah Jazz. As successful as they've been, they're clearly trending down, and up until this point, they've had one of the easier strength of schedules. They've got the 4th hardest strength of schedule remaining according to Tankathon. Their next 10 games are the Celtics, the Warriors, the Kings, the Cavs, the Pistons twice, the Cavs twice, the Pelicans, and the Nuggets. Outside of those Pistons games, those are all very, very good teams, and with the way they're playing right now, I don't know how many of those games I'm positive they'll win. They'll probably come out of it above 500 because they are still a good team, just not one that is nearly as good as I thought they would be. So let's talk about what's been going wrong. Why are they on this skid? Why have they been so underwhelming? And a lot of the issues I'm going to talk about here are basically the same ones that I talked about in my last Bucks video like a month and a half ago. It's kind of concerning that the issues are the same as they were back then, and the fact that a lot of them have gotten even worse. I'm more concerned now than I was then, part of the reason why I'm making this new video. So let's talk about them again. The top thing that's been the problem this season is the defense. We knew when they traded Jrue Holiday, the defense would get worse, especially on the perimeter, but I thought having Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo, they would still be fine defensively, even though they weren't going to be great. Hasn't really been the case. They've been the 22nd ranked defense this season behind teams like the Golden State Warriors, the Sacramento Kings, and the Blazers, none of whom are particularly known for their defense. Malik Beasley is being used as their primary perimeter stopper. If the other team has a great offensive guard, they're probably being guarded by Malik Beasley, which is almost never going to work. He is not a high-level perimeter defender. He's been knocking down his threes this season, but he's not going to give you much defensive resistance at all. Damian Lillard has been really bad defensively this season. He's never been a good defender, but this season, especially as of late, the defense has been getting worse and worse, and it feels like at this point he's one of the worst defensive guards in the entire league. But the defensive regression isn't all on the Dame trade. It's not all on Malik Beasley. It's really a team-wide thing. I mean, you watch them against the Utah Jazz. They started Andre Jackson, one of their better perimeter defenders, and still got torched in the absence of Damian Lillard. He wasn't even out there, and it still did not matter. The Jazz destroyed them. It's just been a lack of effort from everybody on the team, poor scheming. The fact that they came out this flat defensively after Giannis called out the entire franchise is embarrassing. Guys are getting consistently blown by on the perimeter. Interior guys are trying to make up for the mistakes of those guys, but even they haven't been the sharpest. Everything is a mess, and this has led them a lot of games to big first quarter, second quarter, third quarter deficits, to the point where in the fourth quarter, they're forced to make these miraculous comebacks like they try to do against Utah, and it's led to some wins. They've had a lot of big comeback wins this season, but in the playoffs, and as you face better and better teams as the season goes on, you can't do this consistently. You're not going to win a playoff series coming back from double digits every single game. It's just not going to work. You're not going to beat the Celtics. You're not going to beat Philly playing like this or defending like this primarily. Last year, the Nuggets, as the champions, had a bit of a weaker defense than usual for an NBA champion, but they were ranked 15th. This Bucks team is 7 spots worse than them, and the Nuggets at least showed the ability to turn it up at times. The Bucks really haven't shown me a capability to do that much at all yet. Between the horrifically slow starts and the big regression on defense, the Bucks have 2 major problems, and I think a lot of this does stem from coaching. As much as Bucks fans didn't really like Mike Budenholzer, a lot of them were still calling for him to be fired after they won the finals, Bud had a system in place that made Brook Lopez a top 3 defensive player. They were really successful a lot of seasons under his schemes, and now with Adrian Griffin, Bucks fans are calling for his job every single night. Every time they lose, even when they win, there are Bucks fans that are saying Adrian Griffin needs to go. Last night, I saw Bucks fans say that, oh, I'm glad we didn't pull off that comeback because it might have resulted in Adrian Griffin being the coach for longer. That's how much Bucks fans want him gone at this point. And honestly, I don't blame them a ton. He has failed to scheme this team into anything consistent defensively. I know you don't have a great overall defensive roster, but you should at least have some okay nights out there with Brook Lopez and Giannis. I feel like he's put them in a scheme that doesn't at all highlight their strengths. It doesn't hide the weaknesses of others. I mean, tonight, despite MarJon Beauchamp being one of their better perimeter defenders, he really didn't play much at all down the stretch, which was confusing. He was one of the only players, in fact, he was the only guy in the team with a positive plus-minus, and he stopped playing towards the end of the game for some reason. I really liked him as a coaching hire when it happened, but so far, I've just been super underwhelmed. Maybe they should have gotten an experienced coach to run this thing. He's not doing a lot of stuff that worked last year. Been multiple times this season where players are directly going to him and saying, hey, this is what we need to do. And as a coach, it's perfectly fine if you have an open dialogue with the players. I think that's a great idea, actually. But the fact that players are telling you specifically, this is how we need to scheme the game, and it's happening time and time again, is not the best look. The coach at some point has to put a scheme into place and have the players execute it, but he's trying a billion different things and none of them are working, and none of them are the things that worked for them so well last season. I don't want to go too hard in on him because he is trying to learn how to be a head coach on the fly, which is a really difficult thing to do, but maybe he just wasn't the right hire for this team. This team is trying to take advantage of a somewhat limited championship window. It's not super small or anything like that, but Dame is certainly getting older. You have to try and win championships, be as competitive as you can now, and maybe a first-year head coach wasn't the best decision. I don't know if firing him right now midseason is the right move like Bucks fans are calling for, but so far what he's been doing has not been working. I do want to say Adrian Griffin is not the only problem with this team. I've seen a lot of Bucks fans try to say that when they fire Adrian Griffin, things are just going to get magically better and they're going to be like the best team in the world. It's not going to happen because the defense, even though it's gotten worse under him, I still don't think is great, and the depth is still a big problem. We knew that was going to be an issue coming into the year. It's been bad so far. Jay Crowder has been hurt for most of the season. MarJon Beauchamp has not taken the jump I was hoping for. far. Pat Connaughton is inconsistent. Bobby Portis isn't having one of his typical six-man of the year type seasons we're used to from him. Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton have been solid, but not fantastic. Brook Lopez really not hitting threes like he used to. Guys like AJ Green, Andre Jackson, Chris Livingston are being asked to help them out a lot, and they've each had some moments, but those aren't fantastic depth pieces. They could all be good down the line, but this Bucks team just feels like it needs more guys. However, they gave up pretty much all their assets to make the Dame trade happen, as well as the Jrue Holiday one prior to that. They just don't really have a lot of pieces that they can use to upgrade this roster and put them in a better spot than they are right now. There's not a lot of ways to improve. They could probably make some smaller trades, but for the most part, this is probably still going to be the roster they have when they go into the playoffs. They've also had some issues with Dame. He's not having a great season so far, putting up 25 points per game, 4.3 boards and 7 assists while shooting 42.8% from the field and 35.2% from deep. Outside of his 2021-2022 campaign, where he really struggled due to that core injury, he's shooting the lowest field goal percentage of his career since 2016 and the lowest three-point percentage since 2015. He has not been the world beater he was last year, where he had maybe again the best season of his career. And it's an adjustment period. He's learning how to play in a new place. The first time he's not playing in Portland in the NBA, playing alongside a top 10 player in Giannis under a first-year head coach. And they have been figuring things out a little bit more recently on the offensive end. He and Giannis have been getting better at the two-man game. They've been running pick and rolls a lot better recently, and he's still been clutch. But the defense, like I mentioned earlier, has been awful, and he isn't nearly as efficient as you want. Part of the appeal of bringing Dame into this fold was that you get this high level of efficiency and that Giannis and Dame would both boost each other up. However, it's been one of the more inefficient seasons of Dame's recent career. He's an extremely talented player, so I'm not worrying too much about him. There's plenty of time for him to get himself right. He's also going through some personal stuff right now. I believe he's currently going through a divorce as well as some other personal issues, so I think that's probably weighing on him mentally as well. So I'm not going to go too hard into Dame. He's an all NBA, top 75 all-time level talent. I think he's eventually going to figure it out. But part of the issue up to this point is that Dame hasn't been as good as they were expecting him to be. So they've got all these problems, yet they're still 25-12. A lot of that has been Giannis, who's in the midst of a monster season. But I don't know. I just thought they were going to be better than this. I thought they'd be a juggernaut. I thought they'd be directly competing with the Boston Celtics. Right now, if you put them in a playoff series, I think the Celtics pretty surely win that one in like 5-6 games at the most. And the 6 games would only be because the Bucks do still have a lot of talent, but the Celtics are very clearly the better team in the Eastern Conference right now. I might even take the Sixers in a series against the Bucks at this point with the way that the Bucks are defending. I was just more excited for them this season. I had higher expectations. There still is time for them to figure things out. Maybe it is a coaching change. Maybe it's some kind of stunning trade they make. Maybe it's like Jay Crowder getting healthy and them just finding more of a rhythm. I don't know what it is, but hopefully the Bucks find a way to turn things around. I want to see them be successful this season. It's just a matter of if they can actually put it together. So those are my thoughts on the Bucks. They've just been underwhelming so far this season. Let me know down below in the comments what you've thought about Milwaukee so far. What would you do to fix this team? Would you fire Adrian Griffin? What trades would you try and make? Who would you end up trading? Would love to hear your opinions down below. As always, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, stay back.